Yeah, there's 3 of these in the series, and this is the very first one, our inaugural Serving Through Song webinar. And so we're very pleased to have all, 103 with us today for this webinar. I'm going to bring on the stage the main 2 presenters. I'm going to bring on David Sims, Senior Music Director here at Augsburg Fortress, and then certainly now our featured speaker, David Cherwien. Interesting enough, we have a trinity of Davids here. We're battling as to see who is the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit of this group, but we're just glad to have both of you here. So that you know, David Cherwien's theme is venturing beyond the page, hymn improvisation to enliven the assembly song. And we're just really excited, David, to hear you speak more about this. And in fact, I'm going to turn it over to the 2 of you to begin a little bit of time together.
Thank you so much, David. I'm David Sims. I'm the Senior Music Editor here at Augsburg Fortress. We try to be practical and helpful with our resources, and so we're so thrilled to have one of the most practical and helpful musicians around, David Cherwien. David has spent his career as a church musician, an organist, a composer, a conductor. He recently retired from being the cantor at Mount Olive Lutheran Church here in Minneapolis, and as the conductor of the National Lutheran Choir. Today, you're going to see 4 Davids. Right, we have David Shankconnect, who's behind the scenes. We have me. We have David Cherwien in the present, and then we have David Cherwien from last month. You can see neither of us has an organ where we are right now, and so he very helpfully recorded all of his examples ahead of time, knowing in the future what he'd be talking about. And so we're going to call up videos so that we can actually imagine and hear what he's saying, not just in our mind. So, David, I am certainly trained as a musician, that my skill was based on how faithfully I obeyed what's on this page. And so improvising feels like I'm going on a journey with no map, and I'm departing from everything I know because this is what I think the music is. How would you think we should get started?
Well, first of all, I remember when Alice Parker did this once. She held up a page to her ear and says, "I don't hear anything." Because the page itself is not the music. The page is the path to launching the music, which helps us either create music, those symbols of ink on the page, help us create something, or give us the tools we need to do that, or to recreate something that a composer had composed. But the thing is, anytime you bring something to life from a page, it's unique. It's never been that way before. It's going to be the way you have it turn out. And we can have a lot to say on that. But as you say, I think many of us are almost 100% paper trained. We're just, we're not used to not doing what's on the page. We look and say, I've got to play every single note that you see in front of you and the exact rhythms and all that. But actually, there are many, many parts of the world and many parts of history where that's not the case, where there was no page, or where just a little bit of information on the page is all you need. The rest you have to come up with. I suppose an extreme example would be in Baroque times. They didn't have dynamics or those kinds of instructions because musicians were supposed to know what to do. Well, that's kind of, think along those lines. You're not breaking a law when you do this, but you are just opening things up. And there are many reasons why we can do that. And you can do it just a little bit of it, or a lot of venturing beyond what you see on the page. It depends on what you're ready and feeling bold enough to do. So I suppose you start with a question, why would I do that? And I have found that it really helps bring texts and tunes to life and can amplify the meaning of whatever is being sung, and character of what's being sung, maybe relative to where it came to us from. Venturing off the page can also add contrast within a service or within a season, and it can be custom fit for every assembly or context. And a hymn placed in one part of the service might be presented a certain way. If it's a different part of the service, that same hymn might have a very different presentation. So there are things that we can do to bring that out. Sometimes it's just practical. If you are, say, you have a piano as your main instrument, you don't have an organ, and you're looking at a 4-part setting in a hymnal, Certainly you could just play what you see, the notes on the page, but a piano, being a percussion instrument, likes to arpeggiate. I'll just demonstrate real quickly. So instead of, you can roll. So it's a very practical thing that you just, that's not on the page, but you can certainly, it's playing the same notes, just not all together. Start at the bottom, go up and back down again until you run out of fingers, I guess. But it's that kind of practical thing. If you're a guitar player, same thing. Guitar players can't play 4-part settings, so but guitar players are used to leaving the page. So let's talk about where would you want to apply some of this, and I think the majority of it is connected to the congregational song, supporting their singing with the setting that you provide, the harmonization or the accompaniment itself, such as the arpeggiated piano. And certainly in the introductions to the singing, because the introductions are a special opportunity because nobody's singing yet. So that allows a lot more freedom and chance for some variety. And maybe we're talking about things like the prelude, offertory, postlude. I often improvise those. But that's not as critically important. And I think sometimes those things grow out of what we do with the hymns. And so it's not necessarily a focus point in this, or certainly not the French style of coming up with a whole symphonic improvisation on the organ with a full fugue and all that. So when it comes to congregational singing, editors mostly make decisions for us about harmony, the settings to use. Sometimes accompaniments are provided. But in reality, the melody and the text, those are the two given fixed things that we don't change. But the rest can be up for grabs. And both the tune and the melody, the text and the melody can be wonderful launch points. As long as those two things are clear, is the tune is clear so people know they're on the right page, and the tactus or the pulse is very consistent and clear, so that every downbeat is exactly when people expect it. You develop a sense of trust in the room. And otherwise, if it's not the downbeat, not when they expect it, they do a solo. And many people would rather run in public naked than do a solo. So it's really, you want to avoid that. So if those two are clear, I think you're free to do much. So you can ask, is there a musical phrase to be harnessed for launching off the page? Is there like a phrase or word of the text that can be represented musically? So let's watch videos 1 and 2 demonstrate that. For the hymn, Come Down, O Love Divine, the words come down are something I could depict musically. I'm just gonna come down. Etc. And video 2 shows something about the word walk with Jesus, follow his example pure. The word follow always says to me, maybe there's a canon there. Maybe just simply walking. My pedal, my feet can walk down a scale and bring the hymn in with the manuals. Kind of like a walking bass.
That's helpful when I think about improvisation. I think about a French symphony or something, but this is just one idea, and I feel like I could do one idea. Just come down. I can do that.
Yes, and
Yeah.
there are often words like that in most hymns, something you go, oh, that I can do. It may not be the theological thing, maybe it is. It's helpful when it is, but it can be anything that sparks an idea is a good launch point. And remember, that's what we're talking about here. It could also be just simply a mood. And there was a whole thing about that in the Baroque era, which Bach made use of very often, little musical figures that depicted a mood, and Bach would interject that and combine that with the melody. So let's watch video 3 demonstrate that.
Baroque times, little figures were used to portray emotions or feelings, such as this one, called the sighing motif. It portrayed anguish or sorrow. So pair that with O Sacred Head. Or this one of joy, I could pair together with something like Now Thank We All Our God and portray a sense of joy as I pair that with the melody. This is a little harder, but maybe some of you could do something like this. Etc.
When you're playing literature, are you looking at those kinds of things also, thinking about, oh, that's a neat device that they use to encapsulate that?
Always. And Paul Manz taught me, you got to keep learning new literature for that reason as well. It is not only developing your skills and all that, but getting ideas about that. And most music that's based on either hymn tunes or Gregorian tunes, and some of the French music have those kinds of figures that you can transport. This is just like the way jazz works, the little licks that get transported to a different context. And it's actually part of a learning sequence for some teachers in Europe for teaching improvisation. Although I do have to throw in at this point, some hymns are too closely bound to their original setting from the composer that venturing off the page almost is maybe not the best idea. I'm thinking of Calvin Hampton's St. Helena or Hubert Parry's Jerusalem. I can't hear Jerusalem without Parry's setting, which is so wonderfully full of tug and pull with the suspensions, and then that interlude that he puts in the middle between each verse. When I just feel like something's wrong when that's missing with that hymn. But okay, you listen to that Now Thank We All Our God and going, well, that's way too hard for me. But where do I start would be another question for we paper-trained people. Where do you begin? I think there's a song there. I'd like to think of just getting beyond, to start with the introductions to the hymn, because nobody's singing yet. So that, as I mentioned before, gives some more freedom. You don't have to worry about being exact what people are looking at the page, as long as they can recognize what you're doing. So obviously, the more known a tune is, the more free you can be with the introduction. The key thing is when you venture from the page we're introducing something is to be very clear when you are done introducing and when the congregation is supposed to breathe and sing. And it always needs a lift, breathe, sing, those 3 beats within a measure. But anyway, let's watch the next video which demonstrates, oh, no, I jumped the gun here. I jumped the gun. Let me back up just a little bit. Meep, 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 meep. And we'll go to just looking at, again, starting with something Paul Manz taught me. Could we look at slide 1 as I talk? When I'm thinking about what am I going to do for an introduction, he taught me to read the words, maybe underline one that catches your attention, and see if that can be depicted musically, given the context of the hymn and in the service that day. So would I want to introduce this and give the lens for the whole hymn to be about rest from the last line? Let us find our rest in thee. Or maybe strength, Israel's strength, which is in stanza 2. Or maybe from our fears and sins, focusing on what we want to be released from as we wait for Jesus. So let's listen to video 4, demonstrate that, and then we'll come back to where we were.
For come thou long expected Jesus, maybe it's all about rest. Let us find our rest in thee.
Simple series of chords.
Maybe it's all about Israel's strength. Maybe you can hear several improvisation ideas in here. It's from our fears and sins, release us, and we are waiting. Etc. That one's a little harder, but maybe that sparks an idea.
So you might notice as well that when you do something with introductions, it's really an opportunity to use individual colors of the organ. And so that not all of the sounds between the prelude and postlude are principal, 8, 4, and mixture, or combination of those three. It's the individual. You can find the perfect spot for that 2-foot flute, or the perfect place to put a 32-foot reed with a 1-foot flute to playfully present a tune. It's a chance for those colors to be full of variety, that any organ, even the crappiest electronic organ, has interesting colors that you can find. So
Walter Pell's once told me that General 3 won't solve all of your problems. I think that's a good life lesson. Yeah,
that's exactly right. Yeah, use all the pistons for the prelude and postlude, but everything in between is one sound. You know, that's a quick way to losing interest in the organ. So let's come back to some simple introduction ideas that are not just simply first and last line with the same color in the organ, but just some other kinds of ideas that you could go and do next week. So let's watch video 5, demonstrate those.
These are simple introduction ideas that aren't really too hard. You can mostly use what's already in the hymnal, like alternating between unison and harmony. Left hand. Or maybe with hymns that are well known, you don't have to start with the first phrase. Start with one of the middle ones, like In Joy to the World. Maybe you just simply use a canon. better when one of those two voices is a different color. Experiment with different entrances. And it doesn't always have to be pretty. Another trick is a pedal point, where you just plant your foot on a note and leave it there. Maybe it's in the text, like foundation. A church is one foundation. Or how firm a foundation. Also had a canon, you might have noticed. Sometimes a very simple pattern is all you need. There can be simple things that are more interesting than just first and last line.
That's so helpful also in thinking about all of those different ideas. The tactus was always very clear. Like I could have come in and sung right in the tempo of the hymn. And so as you're practicing this to practice, are you doing this in a tempo that people could lift, breathe, and sing right along with it?
Exactly. That is so important. When you do it, when you venture from the page for the introduction, you have to be crystal clear when you're done and they're supposed to lift, breathe, sing. That also means don't put a lift, breathe, don't add a lift during the introduction, because they might come in and sing. And if they do, you better go with them and they win. You forget everything else you planned. I also used a lot of canon, you might have noticed. The thing about canon, at first they can throw your brain off and one of the voices may go somewhere you didn't plan. Just go with that. I mean, because nobody's singing, you don't have to worry about it. And you can just sort of think, well, that was interesting. I planned it that way, I think. But although it's important to stay truthful. I have found over the years that there are two lines of skill to develop that when you do, it opens up more and more possibilities for you the more you work with these. One is learning how to harmonize a melody, to have different harmonies under it. Another one is counterpoint. How do you create another melody to go with the hymn tune you're working with? That's a melody in of itself, not unlike having a flute and an oboe. One of them has the hymn tune, the other is something else, but they work beautifully together. So the question, how do paper-trained people begin? I would say with harmony, it's a matter of freeing your mind from what you see on the page, what an editor or maybe even the composer of the tune has made the decision to harmonize a particular note with. There are always options. So let's take a look at slide number 2, and you'll see the pitch G has all those options under it, and each of them has a little different effect. There's the safe G major, there's the blue E minor, the urgent A7, the fluorescent orange. All of those are possible, and video 6 will demonstrate those. So let's watch video 6. Or not.
Many different harmonies one could put to the simple pitch G. There's G major, very safe. There's E flat, there's C major, there's the alarming A7, or the super alarming E diminished, or pick your diminished chord, it may be several, or A flat major 7, or very alarming F sharp minor 9. They all have a different effect.
So when starting to explore the options of harmonizing a given tune, it may seem overwhelming at first. And so maybe here's a simple way just to start, is to pick one chord. So let's take a look at slide 3. We'll go to the last note of the first phrase of this hymn, the circled on the second system. It's an F under the word down. And the harmonization in the book on the page is F major. And there are other options, as we just demonstrated. So what if we harmonize that one note with D minor? So you can scan ahead, see that F coming, and play D minor chord there. All you're changing is the alto and pedal to do that. Move the pedal to D and the alto to D as well, and you've got a D minor chord. That would be a start. You do that once, and then 2 months later, when you feel bold enough again, you do it again. And eventually that maybe moves to drive you to want to do more. So you could start with changing the chord before the one that you've changed. So if we want to land on a D minor chord, the best and strongest chord to put there would be A major, because that leads us to D minor chord. So the chord under the word come, the melody note is a G. So if we can put an A major chord there, does G fit A major? And it does if that's the 7th, if it's an A major 7 chord. And that has a pitch in it that's very different from F major, which is C sharp in that. So if I just lost you, don't worry about it. That's not a critical concept. It's just one step you can take. So let's hear what those sound like, combined with what happens when you harmonize the entire melody freely, with eventually when you're feeling so bold to do, with video 7.
Here's Love Divine, All Loves Excelling, with just one chord changed. Here's the same thing with 2 chords changed. Here's creating a whole different harmonization for the whole first phrase.
So let's take a look at slide 4. You maybe heard some chords that were quite different in that last example. And you'll see that for the note joy, the melody line has a C in it. And what I played for that spot was an A flat major chord. So A flat is quite a ways from anything you would hear in the key of D minor or F major of this hymn. So that's what makes it stand out. And I did that also with the G of excelling. I played an E flat chord under that. So you can begin to see that pitch could also have this chord, and try them. And what you're doing is connecting your brain with your ears. And sometimes your ears say, yeah, that's an idea that doesn't work. Don't be doing that. And so you want to try that during your rehearsal time and not when you're live in a service. That's the time to do these. But I think doing this more and more frees up your thinking so that you can do more. We can come back now to the that slide can be put away. So the other line of thinking I mentioned was creating a counter line, a counter melody, and to come up with some other line that works together with the melody, as if you had a flute and an oboe. And the key important point is counter, so that everything that the free voice does is contrarian. So if the melody of the hymn goes up, the free voice goes down. If the melody stays static, the free voice moves around. If the melody moves fast, the free voice can stay calmer, things like that. And putting as much variety of steps and skips in the free voice as possible without getting stuck with one simple pattern you just kind of repeat over and over again in sequence. So let's take a look at slide 5. I was taught a process by more than one teacher of developing exercises to help expand this ability gradually. And so I used it similar to what we did with Hannon and scales when learning to use a piano. It becomes the first 5 minutes of every practice session. You sit down and do this with a tune. And at first you might think this sounds horrible, but it's important to just keep going, because eventually, well, first of all, don't teach yourself to stop. That's not a skill you want to have when you get live, is stumbling when something doesn't go right. That more important to keep going, get yourself out of corners you backed yourself into, let it sound ugly until you can get it to sound good. Nothing works better quickly that way than parallel thirds or sixths, but the idea is we want to start getting back to countering motion as much as possible. But start by having the right hand play the melody of the hymn with a reed stop on the organ, something that helps your brain clearly distinguish between the melody of the hymn and the free voice. And the left hand does something contrarian to that, starting with just one note for one note of the melody, or quarter notes, then eighth notes in the left hand, free voice, then triplets, then sixteenths, then mix them all up. So let's watch video 8 demonstrate this.
Learning counterpoint, you can do these exercises. At first they don't sound so good, but the more you do it, the better it sounds. Starting with one free note to one note of the melody on a different color. So one note for one note. You can do eighth notes in the free voice. Triplets in the free voice. And yes, you guessed it, 16th voice. It's important to keep going no matter what happens, even if it sounds bad. And the more you do this, the better and easier it gets. Then you mix them all up.
As we've been going through these examples and talking about improvisation, I don't think you've ever used the word inspiration or magic, or you're waiting for this. Like, it's all you've talked about: skill and practice and thoughtfulness, right? These are skills that you can learn. It's not just waiting for the magic to fall down on you.
That's exactly right. You know, unfortunately, that's the truth. It practicing helps, and you start with small things and get those under your ability, and then add. It's like adding a toolbox of things, and you eventually look and you see a certain word and go, oh, this tool works for that. But you start by building those tools, and it begins with, like, the letter when we learned to type F, 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 or that was J, 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 then F, 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 F. And you just sort of add from there, and it drives you to the next thing. So that's really exactly what it is. So I think one more application, and then we'll move on to the questions that we wanted to include in a part of this too, was does all of this apply to the liturgy as well as the hymns? And I would say absolutely, even the psalmody. Now, there are many composers of the liturgical songs we sing still alive who provided those harmonizations that we play. So it's with humble respect that I would suggest doing some of these things. But again, the introduction is probably the most important point to draw from some of these abilities. And I don't introduce everything in a liturgy. The Sanctus, for example, I think should just burst into song at the words that the presiding minister gives right before them. But like the gospel acclamation, the hymn of praise, glory to God in the highest, or this is a feast, or Lamb of God, they are maybe helped by a little introduction, and I would do the same thing. And let's throw video 9. so that we can demonstrate how this would apply to something like the gospel acclamation.
Take the Alleluia, for example, as written. Maybe during Advent, you want a little more subdued and start with the question, Lord, to whom shall we go? Starting with a good pedal point always helps. Maybe during the season of Epiphany, you add this counter theme. Maybe during Easter, you add a little trumpet fanfare. Maybe on the Reign of Christ Sunday, you up the ante a little bit. Too much? Maybe. Your people are your people, you know them better. But maybe a more important question is too little.
It's important to notice that each of those examples was very clear when introduction is done and that pedal downbeat launch the congregation into singing. And in some, I think if the cue to breathe and sing is really clear, if the melody is clear and enhanced, not made harder, you are free to venture beyond the page as much as you are feeling comfortable doing or bold to do. So I hope you do. That's my hope. So I think we can move into questions now. Or
That's
other
so wonderful. Thank you so much. That also, I think, just gives us permission to play around in our own practice time and feel free and creative, and then brings the best of that to worship on Sunday morning, or whenever you're having worship. I have a question.
Yes.
If I want to start practicing and improvising and putting together hymns, and I think I want to do a hymn festival with my church, perhaps. How do I start to think about that? Like, how do I do 2 pieces? Do I do 20 pieces? And how do I make sure that not every hymn just sounds the same? So, like, do you have basic ideas for a hymn festival,
Sure.
in terms of timing or texture differences?
Oh, yes, I do. I think 7 to 9 hymns is probably the max, and that's 60 to 75 minutes usually on the average. And it's not about time as much as it is about people being able to sing how much, and keeping a vibrant sense of vibrancy. And that's why it's also important to build rest into a program so that people aren't singing 100% of the time. The last thing I would want is someone to get through the 4th hymn and start scanning how many more do we have to go, so less is more. But it's also helpful to start with a good theme, some kind of connective thing that creates the flow. So a theme that has multiple facets, something like the church year, where you could go Advent, Epiphany, and have a hymn for each of those, or stages of life, or baptismal life, or calling, or chorales, or whatever. Something that you can subdivide into things and then find hymns to fit there, and give some room for reflection, some kind of spoken. I think the speaking is important for a number of reasons, because it provides rest for one thing, and it allows the the musician who's leading it, or whatever verb you want to use, to focus in on the next hymn as well. It's time for that. It's like a cleanser. But those reflections are important. So it's an opportunity to partner with someone who's a theological thinker who would do that well, or you could cheat and use Susan's books, Susan Cherwien's books, which is 3 books full of hymn festivals with all of this kind of planning already done. But a real critical thing is, which hymns do you pick? They have to have maybe close to half familiar to the people, so that they can sing and enjoy singing them. And then you find ways to illuminate them in surprising ways through your harmonizations or introductions or whatever. And then also have some new as well that people have never encountered. But I feel like if you don't have both of those, you don't have either one. And then, of course, if you have 7 to 9 hymns, it's important to have variety, huge variety, fast, slow, loud, soft, where they come from, different eras of time. The more variety of those things that you can build into it, the better everything's going to be. You have to have loud and soft, for example, or you don't have either. You don't have forte without piano. You don't have piano without forte. And so those all have to be built into a program. So it's a challenge to come up with a hymn festival.
Thank you.
Yeah.
David Schenkenecht, are there any questions that we should address?
Well, there's questions and comments. I like this one here from Robin, who's getting ready to do a hymn festival. Why not, right?
That's a great connection. I love that. Yes.
So, I hope it goes well for you, Robin. We have some other interesting comments. I'm going to put up one from Stan here. You've spoken of hymn introductions, but how much improv should one do while the congregation is singing?
Well, I would say that anything that helps support the singing is enough. But I've heard reharmonizations that are more about the reharmonization than they are about helping people sing. So I think keeping the main thing, and you can simply think less is more sometimes, and not overdoing it. So how much improv should one do is really a contextual question. What are the people used to? What do they expect? What are they going to do with that improvisation that you may add to the mix? Bach was criticized because he had those florid, like in Dulce Jubilo, statements of the chorale, and then people waited while he embellished in between phrases, and people complained because it was hard to follow. That's the key. Can they follow? Does it help the melody? Does it enhance the melody, or draw attention to itself? I think would be the answer to that question.
I guess it's similarly, Katrina asks, I try to make it obvious when it's time for them to come in, but sometimes they recognize a line and think they've missed the beginning and start singing during my intro. I usually just let them take the reins rather than point out the mistake. Should I stick to my guns and play my creative intro until they stop? They sing exuberantly. I'm not sure they would ever stop.
Well, I would never want to get in an adversarial mindset with an assembly. They are our partners in what we're doing here. And so I think clarity is at issue. I think when I'm doing an introduction, I make sure I have no possible breath point. That might mean cutting a phrase short because of that, because it might imply a breath, and then they come in. And once in a while, it has happened where they start singing, and yes, they win. But then I would listen to the tape, and my hunch is something was not clear. What often is not clear is a lift, breathe, sing. You have to have that lift part. And many organists just lift for one. They just do breathe, sing, and that's too fast for a congregation. And so if you're consistent with that, then they listen for that. But if you have too big of a break in the middle of your introduction, they're going to think that's the breath point and when they should sing. And so my hunch is that would be the issue. Don't have a breath point during the introduction. And if it happens once, you can tell them, sorry about that, you were right, and I'll figure out what I did. And so that you develop a sense of listening to each other and not sticking to your guns. I think that sounds like a very dangerous mindset.
Well, Mary has a little bit more of a technical question in regard to counterpoint. So with the counterpoint melody using the flute stop, this is in the same key as the hymn, right?
Yes, I mean, to start with, yes, that helps you open up possibilities with that. But if you're able to do that and you feel like you're comfortable doing it in the key of the hymn, a good exercise would be to transport it to another key and do the same exercise there. That opens up, that would be another level of stretching what you can do. But yeah, that's very helpful to stay in the key. That's how descants can be written, by the way, the same process, creating a counterpoint line. So that descant, the most interesting descants are ones that are doing something opposite direction of the hymn tune itself, or the best moments in a very effect. So take a look at the descants and check that out. I bet you'll find the interesting spots are the ones that are contrast.
Here's a question about chimes from Robin. I've been hesitant to use a set of chimes on my organ. Are chimes past their prime today?
Well, again, I don't know what would there might be a context to use those chimes. Is the word bell mentioned in any hymns? I would think yes. But sometimes you don't want to be that literal. So I don't know. It wouldn't hurt, but an introduction or some part of the service, I don't know that they would be heard much during the singing. But there might be a spot for that. Maybe it's signaling the passing of time. A hymn that talks about the passing of time. You use the chimes. It's kind of like a clock, one of those big wall clocks with the chimes. There might be an opportunity to use them, but I think the more you use them, the less effective they would be. I would find the perfect spot and then don't try to apply them everywhere, and they'll be more effective.
All right, David, we've got a very specific question from Joy. I have to improvise on the Lamb of God every Sunday until the choir finishes taking communion. Do you have suggestions for the Lamb of God from ELW setting 3 or an old LBW setting?
That's da 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 da. I'm assuming that's the melody you're referring to. Yeah, you could do exactly the kinds of things we were talking about. First of all, you start that with, I have to improvise. You could look at it as, I get to improvise for the rest of that. But I would also add to that, silence is not something we should be afraid of either. You don't have to have an organist fill in every silent moment in a service. I would say that the silence actually enhances everything else. But yes, you can take just a little piece of that da da dum and use those 3 notes and just do them in different keys, or try something who takes away, have something a musical line that goes away from the melody, something like that. Try putting different chords. Try playing the melody of that with every chord being the major third of a chord. So if it starts on, I think it starts on an E flat, does it not? So the first chord would be a C flat major chord. That would be very different sounding, and just practice that. I think, you can try to avoid doing any one thing too many times, just to explore different things. Then the next week, do a 2-voice thing, just a counterpoint thing. The next voice, just suspend a chord and have the melody soloed out with an interesting stop. So you do 2 different ways from week to week. Yeah, there are lots of options. Keep exploring, you'll find them.
Yeah, and I think you've got Rick convinced here. Wow, the differences really bring the music and word alive. That's what worship is all about.
Right on. Boy, that makes me sound like I'm born in the 60s, doesn't it?
Well, I see a lot of thank yous and a lot of appreciation for what you provided for us, David and David, for our inaugural Serving Through Song webinar. I think this has just been brilliant. Thank you for all that you've provided, and many, many things to not only see in demonstration, but also hopefully to do when we get behind the benches. So really appreciate all that have participated in this webinar. I do want to offer one more opportunity. If you have a question or two, you certainly can ask them. But if that, I'm going to be closing this out here pretty soon. Oh, there are some new comments popped in.
While you look at those, David, I'm just going to say that we have a promo code. If you use Improv15, you can get 15% off of several of Dave's products. We have some of these on sale. And I'm going to use these like a word search now, where I'm going to go to try to find all these techniques in this music to say, okay, where is there canon? Where is there a pedal point? Where is there a counterpoint? And start to deconstruct how these compositions were put together, because I'm really curious to see all the ways, how does that come together in a finished piece. I imagine improvisation is similar to composing in that way.
Yes, yeah, and then when you find them, apply them in a different way to another hymn. That would delight me.
I do see a couple of comments here. Yes, this webinar will be available in a recorded form. I think actually you'll get something sent to you almost immediately afterwards. And then we will be putting an on-demand version on the Augsburg Fortress YouTube site as well. I do have something here from Katrina is asking this, and maybe this is a question that slipped by me here. Someone did ask a question about an interlude before the last verse. Did we answer that question? Is that a good thing to do?
Once in a while. I can always sense when the room needs a little bit of a break. You know, if there are hymns that have a lot of words and are long lines, the meter is long, it can help provide rest. Rest is probably an important concept. But I think interludes, the more you do them, the less effective they are. You certainly don't have to do the circle of fifths every interlude or go up a half step every time. I think those are tools you use once and then leave them alone for a month or 2 months or 3 months.
And I found the original context question. I think the context is one of the procession.
Oh yeah, well, if that's the case, if there's a procession going on and you need to extend, yes, I would practice ways to do that you don't get stuck into a pattern that just keeps repeating, but to explore something new. You know, a really fun little trick is to jump up a third in terms of the key for a minute. So like if you're in G major, for example, you move your pedal 1/2 step down to F sharp and you're in B major. Play a little bit of the hymn and then jump back to the pedal down to D and have your G major come to a cadence and bring in the last stanza. It's a little shot of something other than just some kind of static meandering. That's what I would try to avoid if that's possible.
That's fabulous. Well, as I said, I'm going to conclude this time together with a couple of items that have already been mentioned, but I'm going to show this again. I'm going to show the QR code for the handout. If you came in late and you didn't hear about how to access the handout for this session, you can certainly use that QR code. It takes you right to the Serving Through Song webpage. And under David's lovely picture there in the tux is a button that you can press to get the handouts related to this session. Also, you can go directly to go.augsburgfortress.org and / Serving Through Song, a music webinar series from Augsburg Fortress with all those hyphens in there. So hopefully you have that. There's also, I think, a link in the chat if you didn't see that. So with that, I'm going to close this off by saying thank you again, David. Brilliant. And the people commented often, I wish I had this when I took my organ lessons. Well, this is kind of an organ lesson. So it's kind of our great courses here from fabulous organists and musicians. And so we really want to thank you for being here. And, this is just the first of several that are coming now. And I know Ann Krentz Organ is actually on the webinar, and she's coming up on the 26th, and looking at a theme called Loaves and Fishes, expanding the reach of your music ministry and your congregation. And then on June 2nd, Tom Trenny, the sacred collaboration, the holy ground of doing ministry together. So some really great topics coming up. So with that, I just want to thank everyone for participating in this webinar, and look for the link to see it again if you so choose.
Very good. Thank you.
Bye-bye.